This is one of those topics that I hope if I do a good job tonight, you'll leave thinking that I talked about things that you didn't expect me to talk about. That's the goal. Because I think it's fair to say, if we say, hey, nutrition, diet, everybody here automatically has 5 things they know they could do better already. So why do you need to be here? You already know certain things you could be doing that would improve your health. The goal is that I don't just give you tactics and grocery lists and things that you could literally today go on ChatGPT and ask it, write me a menu for the next 365 days, give me every recipe, here's the guidelines, don't miss a single thing. And in 30 seconds, you could print off a sheet with all of the tactics that you would need to, probably do pretty well with the results that you want to have nutritionally. So, the value here today, I hope, is beyond that. Now, one of my favorite quotes is this, is most people fail to succeed because they trade what they want most for what they want in the moment. Now, that sounds obvious. We're deciding, am I going to eat the apple? Am I going to eat the cookie? And then I pick the cookie, even though my bigger vision for myself is health and I want to eat the apple, but this cookie looks really good. And so I eat the cookie. And we repeat that process over and over and over again. But it doesn't help us understand why we're doing it or how to shift away from doing that. That's just telling you what you already know, which is you're making too many bad choices if you're not achieving the goals that you want. And this is not specific to diet. This is anything. So you can take a lot of the principles that we talk about tonight and apply them to relationship success, career, financial success. They're all the same principles, which is, identify what you want, why you want it, come up with a plan to do it, but it's seeing it through that often is the difficult part. And that's where a lot of people fail, and that's where a lot of people falter. So my goal is to go a step deeper. And of course, we'll talk tactics tonight. I'll talk about what I think you should eat and why, and having an understanding of that information is helpful. But I want you to be able to take a step back and understand more, because you've gone through this. I mean, we could put our hands up and talk about all the diets we've been on and things we've tried and things we failed. But at the end of the day, what we feel, and I sit through enough consultations, literally thousands of them over the last 20 years, and this is what failure feels like. Like I'm just not disciplined, or, I'm just getting old, or it's my genetics, or I have slow metabolism. And I'm not saying that those don't play a role. They do. And you'll see where those weave in tonight. They're important. But at the end of the day, there's another piece to this. And I think it's the piece that gets missing. So let me ask you this. You can either raise your hand or just internally answer this question. How many people have tried a diet for, let's say, a month or more and then gave it up because it didn't work? I mean, I'll put my hand up. Sure. How many people have done that multiple times? Right? Over and over and over again. And so it's easy to get frustrated and feel like you're failing. Now I want you to think about an area where you've been successful, because everybody in this room has something or many things that you are either an expert in or have had a certain level of success in. Think about that right now. So just embody that, whether it's your career, relationships, raising children. Like there's certain things you've done very successfully. Ask yourself, what's the difference? If you can figure that out, and I hope by the end of today I can help you figure that out, at least give you some insight into it. If you can figure that out, that's the secret sauce to making these types of changes last, because you've already done it in other areas. So why can't you do it here? It's not that you don't have enough information, although hopefully we'll talk about things tonight that might be contrary to what you think. It's maybe it's not even motivation. You're motivated for a period of time, but it's very hard to make motivation last if some of these underlying pieces aren't there. And that's what we'll get into. I like James Clear. If you read his book, it's called Atomic Habits. It's a great read if you want to learn about habits. Habits are important. And this is really the crux of, I think, success in any area. And you might have seen this type of graphic before, be, do, have. We're going to talk a lot tonight about do, and why I like the do as a starting point is because until you are the kind of person that would do the things, you don't have the identity yet. And Owen and I had this conversation literally today, which is, he's had lots of success in different areas, but his identity in those areas is, I'm the kind of person who does this, who does this, who does this. And that's why I'm successful. But when it comes to, say, fitness or health, maybe he's not the kind of person that wakes up in the morning and thinks about how much protein he needs to eat. He's not the kind of person that thinks about what's my training regimen look like this week. So what I'm getting at is that part of success beyond this initial phase has to come from a shift in your identity, like who you are and who you are going to be. Otherwise, the reality is you will fail. And failure will look like what I showed you. I'm just getting old. It's my genetics. It's my hormones. And it's easy to chalk it up to those things. If your identity changes because you're doing more of the stuff, and this is how success works, is although you don't have the identity today, let's say you're in our 100-day fit school program as an example, because lots of people are. It's a container to say, look, I'm going to show you what to do for 100 days. It's okay if you're not the kind of person who likes to go train. It doesn't matter because you've committed to a process. You have a coach. You have an accountability coach who's going to bug you if you don't show up. We've built the container on purpose because I understand that if I can get you to do the things that will yield some results, then you'll start to, hopefully, many of you will start to shift your identity to become more of this person. And so I can give you the tactics. We'll talk about them today. I'll give you the grocery list. We'll give you all the resources. But over time, it's who you're going to become that will dictate your success. So you need a structure. Let's talk a lot about the do now. We need a structure, but that structure has to work with biology, right? It has to be a downhill battle, not an uphill battle. And, if you've had success and failures, it might be as simple as you just picked a really hard path. I saw this new diet online and this looked really cool. I'm going to just eat celery every day, for the next 100 days. That's an uphill battle as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, you'll probably lose some body fat over time. It sounds horrible. I don't think it's sustainable. You want to find something that works with biology, and that's really what we're trying to piece together today. So if you don't, you will fail. Again, I want you to understand why you're not going to win at this game. If you've tried restricting calories, I mean extreme calorie restriction, you will lose weight for a period of time until it becomes unsustainable to keep restricting your calories because you're working against your biology. Same thing, you can try to fight hunger, right? And we'll get into it today. And if you're in a burning phase, and we'll talk about the 3 phases, yeah, you probably need to be a little bit hungry sometimes. That's okay. Most people could do with a little bit of hunger. We're very well nourished in North America for the most part. We could handle a little bit of hunger. But again, when you're trying to fight it all day, like I haven't eaten in 24 hours, I'm on like a 72-year fast. And you know what I mean? It's just, you're fighting against the biology of the body. You're ignoring your metabolism. You're ignoring muscle as a huge organ in your body. Many people are dieting, to change their body, to change their body weight without dealing with the developing muscle component. That is a huge mistake. You will fail. Again, you've probably failed at this before. And then you're not paying attention to the environment, meaning your food environment. And there's a great book, and I'm going to forget the name. I believe it has something, again, to do with habits, Charles Duhigg. And he talks about having an elephant. It's very hard to move an elephant through a forest. I mean, they're massive creatures. So what they do to move the elephants is they groove paths for them. And if you groove a path, that elephant will literally just follow you and it will go down the path. Well, that's what we have to create for ourselves, is we need to groove the path. Because if we're going uphill through the snow to school both ways, like we did when we were kids, it's very difficult. You're making it harder on yourself than it has to be. We want to learn to make it easy. Otherwise, biology is just going to win. You're going to fail. And, not to, make this super downtrodden, but we've all failed enough times to know that I'm probably right. You're going to repeat the process. You've seen a new thing. You tested it out. It, quote unquote, didn't work for all the different reasons. But I want you to understand, 1, you're probably worked against biology. And 2, you didn't have a big enough shift in the identity that you have. Like, this is who I am. I focus on my health. This is who I am. I eat protein with every meal. Like, that just becomes your identity. And it's okay if you don't have it today, but over time, you're going to need to create it. Otherwise, you'll fail again. All right. So when you're failing, you can understand, man, I just need to make a shift in how I'm looking at this in perspective, not just in what to do. So now you might have done diets. Who's done a keto diet before? Right? Really popular. Who's done a low-fat diet? That's pretty darn popular. How many people have tried intermittent fasting? Okay, so again, everybody, I mean, these are all the new popular things. I'm going to show you why every one of them works. Because you've done it. Oh, I had a friend, they did keto, it worked for them. They all work for a period of time. Some of them can be sustainable depending on who you are, your identity, right? Are you going uphill, downhill? What's your biology? But the keto diet works because you remove a food group. You eliminate carbohydrates. So you automatically remove a big grouping of food. The low-fat diet works because you remove fat. So you take another group of food out. Intermittent fasting works because you remove a meal. So every single one of them works by the exact same mechanism. You reduce the amount of calories going into your body, the amount of energy that goes in. How you do it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you're reducing the amount of energy that goes in it. So that's why you maybe have had success with any of these. It doesn't make, at least from a body fat perspective, it doesn't make one of these better than the other ones. All right, I think that's important. What matters is what is sustainable. What is sustainable for you? What can you do month after month, year after year? I mean, the fad diets are fun, and maybe you do it for a month just to see. I'm okay with that. I don't mind, using our bodies as testing grounds. Hey, I'm just going to eat, I'm going to go carnivore for a month. Cool. I think that's really neat. I don't have any issue with that. But over time, you want to figure out what's sustainable for you, because that's where your long-term results are going to go. As you know, the start-stop cycle is what is actually keeping you from really having huge success. Same in any area. You get certain success and you stop, you go back. Not only did you start and stop and probably end up behind where you were, you wasted that period of time. Or again, you didn't get the momentum from that. You learned something, so it's not all a waste. But again, we didn't get the momentum from that. So over time, sustainability is what is going to be important. Now, I'm going to make the note, I'm going to talk a lot about body fat loss and transformation that way. But what I want you to understand is, think of that as a proxy for just general health. So when I say you lose body fat, as part of that happening, your metabolic system gets better, you reverse metabolic syndrome, you improve insulin sensitivity. Like, there's a lot of other things that are happening. I'm just going to talk about body fat loss, but it doesn't happen in the vacuum without other things going on to make that work. All right, just for simplicity purposes. Because as an example, let's say the keto diet. Yeah, the keto diet, removing carbohydrates, potentially not sustainable, depends on the person, can be wonderful if someone has major neurological problems, right? Like epilepsy, seizures, and other types of neurological conditions, which is where it really got developed and kind of pushed out. And then more people were doing it, lost body weight. Why? Oh, because they cut out an entire food group. And then they started to maybe gain some of the way back because it wasn't sustainable for them, okay? So some of the diets may have other health benefits depending on your individual profiles, but just from a body fat perspective, sustainability is going to win at this. So let's talk about some of the pillars before we get into the, what to do and what to eat. At the end of the day, we can debate this forever, all right? And I'll give you my point on this. The very, very, very best, most up-to-date evidence we have says, when you control for different types of food, carbohydrate, fat, protein, you control for different situations in controlled research studies where the variables are managed, you will lose the same amount of weight, whether it's controlled for carbohydrates, whether it's controlled for fats. It depends on the energy balance. Now, it's more complicated than that, because you may have struggled with, I started eating less food, but I didn't lose body fat, and I think my hormones. Yes, your hormones do play a role. They're a part of that. Well, I'm getting older. Yes, also plays a role. But at the end of the day, it's still the energy balance that matters, right? I talk to my kids about this, and not because, I want to give them a complex. When I started having these conversations, my wife said, they're going to be all worried about food. I said, no, I would rather them be living in reality and just understand that these are the choices that they're going to have to make for themselves, and not protect them from, you should have this really weird relationship with food and we shouldn't talk about it. My kids could explain some of the physiology around what happens when you have too much energy that goes into your body. Now, I'm not giving them a hard time of, hey, you had a dessert and it's got sugar in it and that's bad. But we do have conversations about energy going into the body and energy going out of the body so they can make good decisions for themselves. calories in and calories out, but it's complicated. On one side, energy in, appetite plays a role. So it's influenced by our hormones. So yeah, let's say someone is in, they're perimenopausal. That makes a difference. If you're struggling with weight loss, yeah, your metabolic total needs are probably lower than someone who's 25 years old. Those are different, but they are manipulable. You can change them based on, your action steps. Obviously, the amount of food consumed, but that's different based on things like, the availability, the types of foods you're eating, the palatability, right? We look at the way food is created today. I'm not saying I want to let you off the hook, but some food is so hyper palatable, like you can't just eat one. That's literally the marketing on it. You can't eat just one. It's hyper palatable. It mixes things like salt and sweet and texture. Those are built to be eaten in large quantities. Calories absorbed. So it comes down to give you an example. If you were to have 1 gram of carbohydrate, it's 4 calories, okay? 4 energy units, we'll call them. After digestion, it's still 4 energy units. That's how much energy is in the carbohydrate. Protein is 4 calories, but after digestion, it's about 2.5 calories. Just because of the digestive process to digest protein requires more energy by your body. And so it uses more energy. So the net effect is actually less calories from eating protein. Right? But it still doesn't make the rule not energy in, not energy out. See what I'm saying? This is where people say, oh, what if you just eat protein and no carbohydrate? Yeah, what I'm saying is whatever's sustainable for you, but the numbers are the numbers. The math has to still math, okay? Psychological factors, stress. So stress, perceived stress, self-esteem, sleep. Sleep is a massive influencer on metabolic rate. I'm talking like if you had poor sleep cycles, it could be 500 calories a day difference. That is a huge amount, significant. Whereas, take person A and person B had poor sleep and their metabolic needs were 500 calories less, but they ate the same amount of food because everything else seemed the same. Person B is going to gain about a pound of fat every single week over top of what this other person's going to gain. It's extremely significant. And on the other side, we've got, again, what our metabolic rate is, which comes down to like our body size, our hormonal status, our dieting history, our current body fat percentage, right? The higher our body fat percentage, the harder it is to burn fat. So there's other factors here. The exercise we're doing, the type of exercise we're doing, the non-exercise, we call it NEPA, meaning are you walking up the stairs, right? Are you taking the elevator? Like those kind of things. Side note, this is actually interesting. In research studies, when people diet and they take a big enough deficit, one of the reasons they maybe don't lose as much weight is because you naturally decrease the amount of extra work you do. You're like, I'm eating less food, so I'm a lot more tired. I'm not going to take the stairs. So you naturally decrease your output as your food intake is going down. And this is why just eating less all the time isn't necessarily going to get you the results, okay? Actually, the creator of this graphic, John Berardi, he was at a Western PhD. He talked about a statement he would call G flux or energy flux, just meaning what was more important was the difference between energy going in and going out. So as an example, if you were only taking 1,000 calories a day and just moving a little and used 1,000 calories, it's net even. But if you were, say, putting in 3,000 calories but putting out 3,000 calories, those two physiques might look very different. Now, you still get the same net in and out, but again, the amount of energy that's turning over creates a very different process than the group who's just like trying to eat less and move less in order to try and figure out their energy balance. So these visuals, I just want you to see this. Think of your body like fuel storage tanks. So this is what I teach my kids. All right, so grade 3 level, here we go. You've got food going in, protein, fiber, carbohydrates, and fat, right? Super basic. So again, it doesn't matter what food, it's all going in, it's all breaking down into these pieces. And then our body's going to metabolize it and it's going to deliver it to different places. So glucose, protein, and some fat is going to go to the muscle. Some of it's going to go to the liver, and some of it's going to get stored as fat. Real simple. All of it is generally maintained by the sensors inside the bloodstream at the pancreas, and it says, let's make insulin. So insulin drives energy into the cells, or let's make glucagon and it pushes it out because we need energy. That's the norm until our energy balance is exceeding what is needed, or what we call an energy toxicity. Think about it this way. It makes a lot of sense. The reason you're gaining body fat is because you have an energy toxicity. That's it. You're toxic in energy. Now we think of toxicity like poison. It is in a sense, because when you have excessive energy that go beyond the needs, it is essentially a poison to your body. It has to go through this very extreme metabolic process, and it is very difficult. And this is what's happening with metabolic syndrome, insulin sensitivity, type 2 diabetes, and all the problems and diseases and illnesses that come and are born out of those. So what'll happen is your muscle will get full, which comes back to a huge principle. You have to be building. You can't just be dieting. If you are not building and protecting muscle, this is we call it a sink. Your muscles are sinks for extra energy. So if you don't have muscle, they don't have to be popping out of your body, but if you don't have muscle mass, you don't have a lot of place to put the extra energy, all right? And so then it goes to the liver. Liver doesn't have a huge resource, but everybody knows if this becomes excessive, you develop what? Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Your body stores fat around the organ systems. It's a telltale sign of insulin sensitivity, metabolic syndrome. And I mean, look, not to be morbid again, but you're accelerating yourself to the end, right? That is just, the research is very, very clear on this stuff. It is not up for debate. And then your fat stores get full. When it comes to the foods, we say, oh, well, if they're all the same, then what does it matter? It can matter to a degree for compliance. So for example, fat is very easily stored as fat. It's in the name, right? Real simple. Carbohydrate can be stored as fat, but it needs to be converted. Protein is very difficult to store as fat, okay? But what I want you to get is when all the stores are full, where does the energy go? It stays in the bloodstream. Does anybody know what that's called? It's called diabetes. It's not a mistake the body made. Oh my God, I mean, I tell this, and I mean this in a loving way for anybody who knew my dad. He passed away 4 or 5 years ago, but I remember literally he turned 60, and one of his friends pulled me aside. He's like, oh, he's so sorry to hear that your dad got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And I said, yeah, I'm surprised it took so long. And he just like looked at me like, what? He's shocked. Because, again, when you come from this model of like, I was perfect and now I have a problem, it was clear as day it was going to be happening. This is what was going on in his body. So it's not rocket science here, all right? I mean, today you can literally pick your own blood and look at your glucose level in 10 seconds. You can see where you stand. You can use that as a measurement to say, hey, I'm doing these things. Am I getting healthier? I think with health, what we tend to do is we look at it as I'm here, and until I lose 1,000 pounds, get rid of every disease I have, I haven't done anything. You got to take these tiny little incremental steps that are very difficult to see happening, but you do them because you know you're doing the right stuff. And then you have these micro moments where you can measure to say, I'm going in the right direction. I'm not going to give up. I'm going. And then when you're off track, you recalibrate and you keep going. So let's talk about this. A couple quick, really important things. Why did this happen? Well, if you know this guy, and you probably don't, his name is Ansel Keys. He came up with the heart health hypothesis, which basically said, if you have high levels of saturated fat in your diet, higher chances of heart attacks. So we did a study called the 7-country study. Long story short, there was 23 countries. He left a bunch out. And so when you actually did the data, there was a mixed bag. It wasn't quite like, hey, if you have a lot of saturated fat, you're going to have heart disease. But what it did was made the cover of Time magazine, and it started the low fat craze. And so, I mean, anybody who's old enough to be around in the 80s, I mean, you remember, the blue labels and all the different things, and, the rice cakes, and it was like low fat everything, but not in exchange for good quality food sources. It was just another great opportunity for companies to market other garbage. Say, look, this is low fat, this is low fat, this is low fat. And we were like, all right, I'm eating cereal and I'm eating all this stuff that's super low fat. Why am I getting fat? And in 84, again, then it became about cholesterol. Now it's cholesterol. Now we can't have fat. Fat's giving us heart attacks. And here we are in 2014, butter's good for us. So I think it brings up a point, which is, we can't always just be jumping around with the newest thing, especially today. The internet's going to send you new stuff today, different stuff tomorrow. We have to think in terms of principles and start to use our mind and think through some of these things. So what happened with the low fat craze was we had an exponential increase in obesity. It's not genetic. You understand that, right? It's not like we genetically became obese. It was lifestyle. Now, we do know today, which is interesting, that if parents or grandparents were obese, there's a more likelihood, and it's not that it's genetic in terms of like you're expected to be this way, you had it, so your kids are, that's not what I mean, but there is a propensity to gain fat more easily because the body has been built for that. And then again, there's certain information that's passed down in the genetic code. There's even some studies that show, this is a crazy one, grandparents, like back, if they came from a period of time where there was a feast versus a famine, you kind of look historically, grandchildren ahead statistically were either more obese or less, and it was correlated to whether the grandparents were in a famine period or a feasting period. So again, just genetics do influence things, and we can think about that even with our own kids, like making these changes today to prepare ourselves to be the best bearers of birth as we go forward, right? If we have, having children. But again, here we are in 1990, 194 million adults worldwide diagnosed, again, I hate the diagnose of being obese, but again, obesity, 878 million, just 22 years later. So again, it's not a genetic thing is my point. It's an energy toxicity problem. Food is so available. It's so hyper palatable. It's just easy to eat whatever we want, whenever we want. Walk in the grocery store. It's like endless. What do I want? This, that, this, Frosted Flakes. Like it's all right there. So unless, and this is my point, unless your identity changes, you can only manage the motivation of not eating the Frosted Flakes for so long, right? You're like, these are going to be really good. I'm going to eat them, okay? So we got to work our way past that. Have you heard of type 3 diabetes? Anybody seen this? Yeah, so this is kind of where the research is going, is when you have elevated blood glucose levels, one of the big things that it contributes now is Alzheimer's and neurodegeneration, right? When you're bathing the brain in excessive glucose, the brain is deteriorating. It's a very adaptable organ, so it happens really slow, and that's why we don't see dementia earlier, even though we may have, health challenges, increased blood glucose. It can take 30, 40 years. But the writing's on the wall. We know this now. We're moving away from the plaquing hypothesis of some of these neurodegenerative disorders and looking more at some of this functional stuff, which is really neat. Same thing, unresolved inflammation. Everybody knows inflammation that hangs around in our body is potentially damaging tissues. So let's talk about what we can do about it. There's 3 things that drive the results you want to get. So again, I don't want to make it super complicated, but these are 3 things you can think about and control day in and day out. Number 1, are we feeling full? Are we eating food that's nutrient dense, that when we eat it, we're like, yeah, I had food. So I use this example a lot. If I take 1,000 calories in cupcakes, all right, and I won't point anybody out, but I'll use myself as an example. I could eat every one of those cupcakes. I promise you, if there was 6 cupcakes on a plate, I could eat them if I wanted to. The same amount of steak to equal those 6 cupcakes would literally be, and then the same amount of chicken would be like, a feast. You wouldn't even be able to eat it. So, are you eating foods that are making you full, right? That's number 1, because you got to work with your biology. If you're eating foods that don't make you full, you're going to be hungry, and then you're going to go get food. And for the most part, your cupboard has all kinds of stuff in it that isn't going to be a good choice. So that's where you're going to go first when it's 9 o'clock at night, is to that cupboard. Number 2, muscle. I already talked about the importance of muscle. You have to be resistance training. And again, it doesn't mean you need to be down pumping up. It means you need to start where you are and progressively load, right? And when we take a client, same thing. We assess you. You're here. This is number 1. This is step 2. This is step 3. Over time, yeah, you want to load your body so you can build muscle. And then food quality. One of the best things about the quality of your food is the higher the quality, the more it self-regulates your hunger. It's kind of the steak versus the cupcake thing, okay? So let's break some of these down. If you control these, the calories regulate themselves. I'm not saying you shouldn't measure your food and weigh. I think there's a time for that. In our Eat by Design coaching program, they help you do that. They look at macros. If somebody needs that level of attention, there's value there for sure. I've gone through periods where had I not measured and weighed my food, I don't think I would appreciate what calories and protein is actually in a certain amount of food. It's kind of shocking, actually. Let's say you're tracking and you go into your app and you go, whoa, this cupcake's 400 calories? Dang, maybe I don't want to eat this cupcake. right? But if you don't think about it, go, oh, it's this big. How could that be a lot? But having that knowledge can be valuable. But over time, I don't want to be, for me, I don't want to have to be weighing and measuring my food every single day, every single meal. Now, there might be times where it's valuable, but again, I think you can get to the point when you're what we call baselining. We'll talk about that in a little bit, whereas you're kind of maintaining where you don't need to be weighing and measuring your food. I would say if you are trying to lose body fat or kind of revamp or reverse some of this, you probably at some point after the initial phase of just changing out better food, you probably want to go through at least a period of time where you're weighing, measuring, kind of tracking some of this stuff. I just call these sprints. If you're going to do a burn, you might want to sprint for 6 weeks and actually intently do that. And then when you baseline, you can just eat real food and let that naturally take care of itself. And then building's a whole other thing. You know, it's funny because most people want to lose weight. That's 10 times easier than building muscle. Maybe 100 times easier. And I don't want to downplay it and say, oh, it's super easy. But when you kind of start to learn the process, you can do it. Building 5 pounds of muscle is really hard. It takes years for people, years. Okay? So let's break it down. Muscle is the organ of longevity. Like if you want to live a long time, BMI is not related to longevity. The thing that most people, oh, I've got a 35 BMI, like I'm obese, blah, blah. That's not even a good correlative to how long you live. But what is the amount of muscle mass you have. The more muscle you have, the longer you live. That is a guaranteed correlation in very high quality research. So what that tells us is we better be building muscle, right? The second part of that is what we call the protein leverage hypothesis. This will be one you can use every day. If you don't eat enough protein, your body will keep seeking out food. Goes back to the cupcakes. You eat the 10 cupcakes, you have 1,000 calories, you're still hungry. Oh my gosh, I'm still starving because you had 0 grams of protein. So your brain says, we need protein. It's a survival nutrient. You need it to live and survive. So your brain says, oh my gosh, like you need to eat more. And you just keep eating and eating. If there's no protein in those foods, you will keep eating endlessly, like thousands and thousands of calories. So again, working with our biology. So we want to leverage this protein seeking that our brain and body does, right? And the last one I'll share with you before I go through the steps and how to apply this. This is the number one thing that if I could have every client learn, it would be this, because this is part of that identity shift. And so I'm going to share it with you. I've had this slide literally since 1999. It's been around forever, right? And I just keep recycling it because it's so important. Most people have the belief that I am healthy until I have a disease, right? At minimum, I'm healthy till I have a symptom. But that is not how the body works. It doesn't match up with anything remotely close to what the physiology is. Health means function, means the cells of your body are doing their job. My heart's doing its job. My lungs are doing its job. My immune system, all the parts are doing their job. When we're either stressed or there's malfunction or there's lack of nutrients, there's a million reasons. And we move away from health, the first step is malfunction. You can't feel that, and you generally can't even measure it. It's immeasurable, but it's happening on a micro level. By the time it becomes pathological, like I can take an X-ray, an MRI, I can do blood work. Now you have some kind of labeled disease process. I have non-alcoholic fatty liver. Well, that's a 30-year process, man. That didn't just happen yesterday. You went from function to malfunction disease. But here's the problem. Most of the time, not all the time, symptoms are the last thing that pop up. I mean, how many, heaven forbid, you have a symptom and then you go and you have some kind of diagnostic testing and you have a serious pathological condition. And you say, oh my gosh, I had no idea this was even happening. It happens all the time, right? Cardiovascular disease is the most obvious one. 30% of people, the first time they know they have cardiovascular disease is when they have a heart attack. Literally, I'm super healthy, right? Again, just my dad passed away, had a cardiac event, was playing hockey that morning, doing all the things. I knew he wasn't functionally healthy. I understood that. But in his mind, he's like, I'm doing really well. I'm good. The cookie doesn't matter today because I'm okay. Again, this is just the reality of how our body works. So what does it mean for us day to day? From an identity shifting standpoint, it just means if I can encourage anything, it's live at this end. Not just in terms of like, these are your outcomes, but you're striving to go in this direction. and stay in this direction as long as you possibly can. There's no reason why you can't live a good life to the very end at a very high peak level, and then it just ends. One of my mentors would say, life should be like a candle. It burns bright to the end and then you blow it out. Not this little dwindling that goes down to the end of the life. I lived to 90, but the last 30 years were terrible. That's not what we want, okay? So let's get into it. Principle-based nutrition. Again, there's 10 principles. They're so simple, almost so simple that they kind of offend the mind. Like, it can't be that easy. It really is, but I'll give you some details in terms of how to apply them. Eat by Design is not a diet. That's number one. It's not a keto diet, a carnivore. I consider Eat by Design a strategy. It's a principle-based strategy to meet the requirements for fuel. So let's talk about a plant, all right? I use this in Life by Design all the time. If this plant was going to be healthy, I don't have a green thumb, but I know it needs fuel, nutrients, carbon dioxide, it needs water, right? And don't step on it. Everything else is inherently designed into the seed for life, but you have to cultivate it in order to have that happen. Yet we don't look at our own bodies that way. We don't do the things our body needs, either consciously or unconsciously, and then our body wilts, quote unquote. We get identified as a pathological process. We give it a name, and then we try and treat the condition. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. Sometimes you got to cut the brown leaves off. Like, I get that. So I'm not saying medical care is invaluable. I'm not saying we shouldn't do those things. What I'm saying is, even if I was doing those things and I had to cut these heads off, for the rest of the cells of the plant to live, should it still get water? Right? It's wild to me that, and again, not an indictment, but let's say someone's diagnosed with a medical condition. And, once you're in that world, like you're in that world, and you've had family yourself. And it's like, my perspective is, if I'm in that world, okay, if I've got to do some steps, but I better be doing the other things too. I should still be focusing on good food. I should still be, trying to train my body if I'm able to do that, getting rest and recovery, making sure my biostructural system's healthy. So that's what Life by Design is about, is meeting these requirements. So here's your 10. Eat real food. Sounds simple. Steak, apple, carrot, right? Again, sounds funny, but the more real food you eat, the more self-regulating you'll be able to do, right? Eat real food. Most real food is going to be a combination of fat and protein, all right? But it's not going to be a combination of fat and carbs. So you'll have some foods that are protein and carbs, protein and fat, but just know that most real foods are not full of fat and carbs. Those ones taste really good because they don't exist in nature, right? They're built and designed to be hyperpalatable. If you leave with anything today, it's this one. Eat protein with every single meal. It is extremely rare for me to have any source of food without protein. Every time I eat, sure, occasionally I'll eat an apple or, those things happen, but I'm not sitting down for a plate of pasta, right? I'm not sitting down for a bowl of rice on its own. I eat those things, but I'm eating protein with every single meal, all right? Why? Many reasons. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient. We talked about this already, the cake, right, versus the steak. Raises your metabolism. The thermogenic effect of food. I said it has less total calories to digest protein. Heard of the meat sweats, right? Thanksgiving, and you eat all the turkey and you're like, oh my gosh. That's what you're feeling. You're feeling the thermogenic effect of food. It takes more energy to digest protein. And again, our body needs protein to make muscle. You have to have enough protein. And so the protein, when we talk about what to eat, is going to be the centerpiece to everything. So it doesn't matter if you're trying to build muscle, maintain, or lose body fat, you should be eating generally the same amount of protein. That single pillar never changes. And this is how you make it simple. That's your pillar. You have fat and carbohydrate. They can vary based on, how you're eating, foods you like. And if you're trying to lose body fat, you might lower one of them a little bit. If you're trying to gain muscle, you might increase one of them a little bit, but the protein basically stays the same. And that's it. That's as simple as it needs to be. So what are protein sources? I'm a fan of healthy animal product sources. I'm not opposed if someone is, let's say, a vegetarian. I will just tell you this, that outside of the complete versus non-complete proteins, and I get the debate, more importantly, protein sources from non-animal food sources are very high in calories. So if I'm going to have a 30 grams of protein from beans, I'm also going to get 500 calories along with those. If I get 30 grams of protein from a chicken breast, I'm going to get 120 calories of chicken. You get what I'm saying? So if you're trying to get 150 grams of protein from all non-animal sources, you're going to have a hard time being below your caloric needs. And that tends to be the biggest struggle for vegetarians, trying to build muscle, maintain weight, good composition, and so on. All right. And again, you can talk about the fat soluble vitamins. Like there's a lot of other things. I think just healthy animal products are my advice. How much? About a gram per pound of target body weight. So if you're targeting 180 pounds, 180 grams. Don't complicate it. If you weigh 200, but you're targeting 180, 180 grams. That's it. And you start to learn, like you could weigh and measure, but you can also go real simple. That is 25 grams of protein. Pretty much any meat, give or take, one palm is 25 grams of protein. One chicken, one steak, one hamburger, 25 grams of protein. Now think about it. If you're doing 150 to 200 grams of protein, see what I mean? Like you're going to be full. An egg is 6 grams. And people tell me, oh, I have eggs. I go, great. How many eggs did you have for breakfast? Like, oh, I have 1 egg. Like, great. So now you're, 174 grams away for the rest of the day. So we'll talk about cholesterol stuff in a second. But here's a simple rule, really, especially if you're in a fat loss or burning phase. Don't eat unless you're hungry. And when you're hungry, eat protein. Don't eat unless you're hungry. And if you're hungry, eat protein. Say it one more time. Don't eat unless you're hungry. When you're hungry, eat protein. I mean, that's kind of it. And then you can fill in the gaps based on your needs. All right. So that's the simple version. Eat plants. You see, I have a question mark there. I don't want to make this a deal breaker. I don't want to go down this, rabbit hole. But what I'll tell you is this. I lean towards the fruit and vegetable of the plant over the stems and the leaves. I can't say that the research is clear that the green parts of the plant have potential issues. I have seen in people who have digestive issues, irritable bowel, those types of things, the roughage component of it can sometimes be challenging to digest. If you're going to eat the green parts, my advice is to cook them. You don't really ruin the bioavailability of the nutrients that much, and you make them more digestible. Now, I'll just make a note. Most of the things you like that you think are vegetables are actually fruits. Avocado's a fruit, cucumber's a fruit, tomato's a fruit, pepper's a fruit, right? Anything with a seed is a fruit. It's very digestible for the body. Most people, when I tell them that, they're like, oh, right, I don't like Brussels sprouts. I don't like broccoli and I don't like kale. So again, not a deal breaker. Yeah, fruits and vegetables are great. Fiber, antioxidants. I tend to lean towards the fruits of the plant versus the stems. Quality fats, extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, butter, beef tallow, ghee. I tend to lean towards the animal-based sources. I mean, there's a big thing right now all over the interwebs about seed oils, good, bad, and I know in the States they're taking them out of. I'm not going to hang my hat on one or the other. I tend to shoot for more animal sources. I think you could make the case that the processing around seed oils might be an issue. Also, plants don't have a lot of fat in them, so it's a bit of a process to extract fats from them. So I just tend to lean towards the animal-based ones. I think when it comes to diet, you really have to decide what are your deal breakers and what is just like fluff, that's kind of passing around the internet at any given time. Eat real food, eat protein first, train your body, do resistance training, recover well, hydrate well, maintain the amount of nutrients you need, energy balance. So it brings up cholesterol question. What I'll say is this could be a long seminar by itself, but I'll say this. The goal is not perfect cholesterol. The goal is metabolic health. Cholesterol is a measurement system. It's a marker. 25% of your brain is made of cholesterol. Cholesterol physiologically is a nutrient, not a toxin. It's a nutrient. Your body's made of it. You would never go to your body and be like, oh, we got to get rid of some of that protein because it's in my artery. It's just part of the body. And when you look at markers like LDLs and HDLs, those are not cholesterol. Those are carriers of cholesterol. Some carry them to the artery, some carry them away. So it's a little more nuanced than that. You just have high elevated LDLs, but your triglycerides are low and your blood glucose is low, then your risk factor is probably low. If you have super high LDLs, but you also have low HDL, you get what I'm saying? A little more nuance to it. So all I would say is this. Before you start popping statins and other cholesterol-lowering medication, just understand a little bit more of the nuances before those decisions are made, okay? So limit grains. So the first 4 were about adding real food, protein, good fats, fruits and vegetables. If you just stop there, you're probably pretty good. So don't make the next couple a deal breaker. Oh, he said I can't eat bread. That's it. I'm out of here. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying if you focus more on what goes in, you will fill that bucket full of nutrient dense food and you have less room for the other potential things. It doesn't mean there's no room. I still have a beer from time to time. I still eat ice cream from. You can do all those things. But when you have an awareness and an identity that matches up, it gets a lot easier to do. Now, I'll tell you why I limit grains, and it's not why most people do. And when I say grains, I would probably preface that by saying gluten-containing grains, but I'm also saying it's not for the reason you think. Gluten is, again, it's a protein that's found in different grains, and there's other types of gluten-like proteins in other grains. They all have them. We know that for some people, there's a sensitivity to that protein. It can cause irritation of the gut. It can cause damage to the gut. Extreme cases we know is celiac. We think a large portion of people are still probably sensitive to it, but that's still not the reason. To me, the reason is this. It's not a great source of anything you can't get anywhere else, right? What am I getting? Some B vitamins? I can get those from other places. So why am I going to risk potential issues or just lots of calories coming in because I need to eat a loaf of bread? So what I tend to do is we focus on lower, more innocuous grains, white rice. I'll have corn. I mean, I can't say if a piece of wheat got in my body, I'm not going to crumble onto the ground or anything like that. We do eat bread. We eat gluten-free breads, again. So there's ways to work around it. And again, I don't want to make it a deal breaker. But what I will say is this. If your entire diet is bread, I think that's a problem. It's low in protein, right? It doesn't have really good fats. It doesn't have a ton of nutrients, and it's high in calories. That's the reason not to make it the core source of your diet. Again, we can talk about sugar as a toxin. I actually don't believe it is. I don't think it is. We all have the ability to metabolize sugar. So it's not that it's a toxin, kind of the same argument about grains. It's that it's very nutrient dense, very calorie dense. So a tablespoon of sugar is going to be about, 100 calories. So when you have 5 of those in a day because, you had a Coke or a cupcake, you're just using up so much energy that it just doesn't make sense. Yes, if you're going to use it, I would suggest, whole food sugars like honey or fruit, but don't tell yourself, oh, wow, it's made with honey. I use agave nectar. It's made with maple syrup. Great. There's still sugar. All right. They're still made of sugar. They're still full of nothing but calories, and they taste amazing, right? So again, we still have to live in the world. I get it, but we need to be aware of that. Don't not include salt. I just throw this in there because the world has gone like this way. Now it's coming back a little bit with hydration and people adding electrolytes to their water, and that's great. I just salt my food to taste, salt my water to taste. Keep it real, real simple. Unless you have you're missing a kidney or you have extreme kidney disease, you should be hydrating and using salt in your diet. It's a nutrient. There's thousands of things that you need salt for in your body. Your cells live and breathe literally on having enough sodium, okay? Earn your carbs. Carbs as a fuel group, they're not bad. We talked about kind of the keto diet and why it worked. You remove one whole food group. I don't think that's necessary per se. I also think there's potentially negative effects that happen when you remove carbohydrates totally. I think there's probably some scenarios where people could do it for a short time. But from a performance standpoint, like training, lifting, running, carbohydrate tends to be a really good fuel source. When your carbohydrate intake is really high, though, they're also really yummy. So that becomes the issue. It's more of a compliance issue. It's not that carbohydrates are bad. It's that it's hard to comply when you're eating cakes and breads and things. So if you're going to eat them, let's shoot for real food sources. Potatoes, sweet potatoes, squashes, root vegetables. Go crazy on your carbs. You're going to get full anyway. They're full of fiber, they're full of nutrients, and there's only so many potatoes you can eat. Until you whip them up, fill the bowl full of cream and butter, and salt. And then you're like, these are amazing. Now I'm eating thousands. You see what I mean? The further away from the natural, kind of less palatable version of the food you go, the easier it is to eat too much of it, right? So just know that, as you're going through the process. I don't want to overdo the conversation about supplements, but it always comes up. Supplements are there to fill gaps. So every single essential I talk about, and I have 6 right now, and it's been 20 years. I mean, I think I started at 3 and I've added 3 over 15 years. So I'll tell you what they are. And I don't think you need every one of them. It would depend on your individual case. Some of them, most people will be fine. Creatine is a hot one right now. I added it about 2 years ago when I kind of saw this happening. It is the most tested, safest supplement on the market. It's probably the closest supplement you can get, and I don't like this word, but to a superfood. And that's what the research is showing in terms of its impact on the brain. New research has come out on its impact on increasing fat loss. It's part of an energy system in the body that we tend to be deficient in, especially if we're not eating a lot of protein. And that's partly where you get your creatine stores, from red meats and other types of products. So I just add 5 grams every day. They started using it when people were having neurodegeneration or concussions, and we're seeing brain recovery. And so now I've just felt like it's probably an essential. So we'll just let everybody take it, and it's dirt cheap. So it kind of fits all the things that we like. Doesn't cost much, it's super safe, and it's really good for you, okay? Probiotics, that would depend on, I think, your gut health and how many antibiotics you've had over your lifetime. It would also depend, honestly, on whether you were born C-section or not. That has an impact on your gut bacteria. Vitamin K2 plays a role in making sure your calcium goes to your bones, not in your arteries. Fish oil, big fan, have been for a long time. Omega-3 fats, magnesium, electrolyte, and then making sure we're getting enough vitamin D. And we can talk about dosing. You'll get emails about all these things eventually. Last few, guys. Dairy is a gray area. Dairy can be a really good food. It can be super nutrient dense. It can be super calorically dense. So, you know, when kids are growing and you're like, oh, I want my young kid to grow up and be a football player, you feed them like quarts of milk. You know, it's like tons of calories. But again, you just have to be aware of that. We personally, do I need to stop? We personally drink raw milk, but again, that's, am I going to get arrested? Again, you can go back and forth on that, but I'm not chugging it down. I mean, 1 cup of raw milk is 250 calories. So, I mean, that stuff's like drinking ice cream. You got to be real careful about what you're consuming. Outside of that dairy, my point is, if you have a dairy allergy, then you probably shouldn't be eating it, right? Like my wife has a dairy allergy. So dairy is no bueno for her. And it's not lactose, it's the dairy proteins. So dairy proteins can be very allergenic. So you may have to just kind of test yourself out. If you're not, my advice is stick to the fuller fat sources like Greek yogurt, heavy cream, butter. Again, know that they have a lot of calories. So you're just using them in little, doses. Same thing, if you're using a lot of cheese in your food, be aware that there's a lot of calories there. Not saying don't eat it, just be aware. And the last one is food quality or quantity. They both matter, but when you dial in your quality, it's easier to dial in the quantity, as we've talked about over and over and over again. So let's talk about some real basic applications. We're talking a lot about fat loss, but again, fat loss is a proxy for overall health, because at a certain body composition, the most important thing somebody could probably do for their health is work towards getting below that body composition. Just statistically, heart disease, we know, like all this stuff is elevated if your body composition is over a certain percentage. And so I'll tell you what those numbers are. You're going to need to know where you are. So it doesn't matter whether you're a Fit Club member or you're a corrective chiropractic patient or you're doing the whole program. I should be able to ask you, say, hey, are you building, burning, or baselining? Now that you've come tonight, obviously pre tonight, maybe you didn't know. It just means like, am I trying to lose body fat? Am I trying to maintain where I'm at? Or am I trying to build muscle? Because they are different, right? They're not the same. Similar principles, but the application of them is going to be quite unique. Now, I'll throw some nuances here. Principles of building, obviously you need to have more calories than your body needs by a little bit, so it can be building muscle. You will naturally probably gain a tiny bit of fat while you're building muscle. It's hard to just build muscle in 0 fat. It can be done, but again, it's a really detailed process. So you're gonna need to eat more food. You're gonna need to train resistance training, and you're gonna have to commit to a very long time. Like for someone who's worked out for a couple of years, for you to build a pound of muscle, 2 pounds of muscle in a year is a journey. But if you're new, you get to leverage all the newbie benefits, which is You could gain 5, 10, 15 pounds of muscle in your first year of training at almost any age. So again, take advantage if you're new to that. Burning, you have to be below your caloric needs. All right. Now, I don't think it's just as simple as eating less, like we talked about. Number one is start training your body to increase its needs, build some muscle so you have more room for that energy, and then try and match up the amount of energy you need so it's just a little bit below what your body needs. I'm not talking like starving yourself, just a little bit below. And that might be using just your feedback. Hey, I'm a little bit hungry all day. That's not a bad way to do it. If you're really serious about it, I think for a period of time, just tracking is really your best bet. I know people resist that, but it honestly works. It just does. All right. There's a level of accountability and awareness to that. But what I'll say with this, and this is, I think, a mistake people make, is although, let me pop this one up. All right, so let's talk about women, because that's, again, usually the group we're talking about here are most interested. If your body fat is above 30%, you should be burning as a general like goal. But what I'll say is if you're new to all of this, before you magically start going into like a caloric deficit, you might want to just baseline for a little bit, which means learn how much food is your actual just baseline. Because for a lot of times when you start, you've been so far off the nutritional rails that if you start trying to quote unquote burn right away, I find you're way below your needs. You're not eating enough. If you just try and focus on food quality, to just be able to step on the scale and have it not move every day, that's not bad, right? If you could step on the scale and it just stays the same over a 6-week process, but at the same time, you could eat more food. So imagine this. Imagine stepping on a scale every morning and every day it stays the same, but each week you were actually eating more food. See what you're doing? You're actually building how much food's going in, and your body's actually using it because you're training and you're active and the food quality is good. Now, when you decide to burn, you have room to burn. If your caloric needs every day are like 1,000 because you've been dieting for 1,000,000 years, and then you try, I'm going to go on another one. It's like, well, I can barely eat any food. You can only sustain that for a period of time. And then, Saturday is going to come and it's 10 o'clock at night and there's a TV show on. And you're like, bring on the ice cream. And you had this deficit all week long and then you ate 5,000 calories. Like, I just wasted that. Your better bet is to try and figure out how much food can I eat and just baseline. Can I eat more real food over time? And then eventually, yes, 100%. Why that graphic is important is it just says, if you're over 30%, and so when we have our new clients go through the FIT school, we have a medical grade body pod assessment. And we have those numbers for you. And we can say, all right, if you're over 30, that's kind of where your goal is going to be for a while until it gets down here. So as a female, you need to get below about 20% before you're really looking at building muscle. Now, it doesn't mean you won't have any muscle. It just means your goal is to train to protect the muscle you have while you're peeling off body fat. All right. Now, if you're a male, they're slightly different. For a male, if you're above 20 to 25%, you should be trying to lose body fat. Because the higher your percentage is, the harder it is to build muscle. It's just hard to build muscle when you have a lot of body fat. So let's focus on the other way first, okay? So we need to know where we're at. We need to know what our goals are in terms of applying this. And here's how it looks. So again, I matched it out to 100 days, real simple. And this is what I'm suggesting for you guys. And these are the last few slides, and then I'll take questions. And those who need to go can go. And you'll get a video. Phase 1, that should not say weeks 1 to 3. That should say like 0 to 50 days. Eat real food. Just number 1, just start being more aware of the food you're eating. Right? You could go home tonight and you could write out your food for today. You can make it a game and be like, not real, not real, not real. That's real. You maybe even go online and say, hey, I had this. Figure out how much protein you had today. How close am I right now to 1 gram per pound of my target weight? And how much of all the food I ate today was of real food quality? Mine wasn't 100%. I had 6 eggs for breakfast, 2 tablespoons of cream, so 2 coffees. I had my fish oil and some other supplements. I had roast beef, potatoes, roast carrots. I had 2 protein bars, not real food, but protein bars, and a bunch of water. So that's what I've had today. And then tonight I'll have some other meal and probably, my protein ice cream for dessert. And that's kind of like my regular day, every day when I'm not measuring and weighing my food. But you could do that and just focus on real food, focus on eating protein with every meal. Try not to be adding extra sugar. If you have oatmeal, for example, you don't need to put brown sugar on your oatmeal, right? I mean, what I do is I'll take my oats, because I do eat oatmeal, and I put a scoop of my protein in it. So now I've got stevia sweetened protein, mix it into my already cooked oats. Don't cook them together. That doesn't taste good. Cook the oatmeal first, put the protein in, mix it in, a little cinnamon. I put salt on mine. That's like a regular mid-morning meal almost every day for me. All right, so don't add extra sugar. Just do your best to reduce the amount of ultra-processed foods. That's it. The goal over the first 50 days is just stabilize your hunger, where you're not hungry all the time and you're just eating whatever's around you, and try and stabilize the blood sugar at the same time. And then number 2 is now we can layer in some stuff, right? But again, not complicated. Add the good fats. Maybe add your fish oil in. Adjust your carbohydrates. Hey, I'm starting to work out. I'm training. I've been not eating carbs because I was told they were bad. You know what? Maybe I'm going to start adding fruit into my diet. Or I'm going to add potatoes back in my diet because I'm not supposed to be afraid of these things. Now I feel fuller. Now my workouts are better. Maybe you're looking at supplementation. Owen, you inspired me today for this slide. Cooking skill development. I'm like, because that is important, A lot of people struggle with, all right, this is all great, but I don't like to cook. And so how do I cook? And the answer I'll give you is the simple answer. Like when my family's away, they'll go and do things. I have pretty much the same meal every day. Ground beef, and I do like to cook, but I'll have ground beef in a bowl with salsa and cottage cheese and maybe a half of an avocado. That's like every single meal for weeks when they go away, because it's just easy and it's high protein, it's good fats, not a ton of carbohydrates, not because I don't want to eat them, but I'll eat those in separate meals. Simple, don't complicate it. Think more about nutrients and not on being like a gourmet cook. Now you can layer in skill development and you can start to really get into this, and there's recipes. And with AI today, give me 5 recipes that are high protein, low fat, moderate carbohydrate, that doesn't made with whatever. You type it all in there. It'll just tell you what to do. And then you just make it. So it's getting easier and easier to do that. And the goal here is to create some sustainable routines. So here's the end and the question. All right. I want to see if you guys listened. You wrote in your notebooks and you figured this all out. Okay. And then for those who need to go, that's great. But I always stay at the end, Eat by Design. Sometimes it's 20, 30 minutes. I'll answer all like your micro questions. Like, what about almond milk? Is quinoa okay? Like all the things now you're thinking, like where does it all fit? So I will stay for that. Here's the question. You already know it's a trick question. So just so you know. If you don't want to answer it, it's okay. I will give you the answer. How do you lose 10 pounds? You want me to give you the answer? Just so, okay. If you get anything, this is the answer to so many questions for you. And I've said, how do you lose 10 pounds? Take that question out. Ask yourself any single thing you would like to accomplish. How do I become more successful? How do I build a better relationship? How do I earn more money? Whatever it is, this is the answer. Become the person who will action the habits necessary to lose 10 pounds. That is the answer every single time. The goal of tonight is not to fast forward you to becoming the person, because that's the process, right? That's the journey. The goal is to give you a structure to get you into the actions, to get some of the results, so then you start to become the person who will do those things without the structure, because it's just what you do. So, for those who don't know, we do have an Eat by Design coaching program. There are 2 doctors that have worked under me for many years. They actually were staff in my practice in London. They started as students in Western, went on to become corrective chiropractors, have sold their practice, and are Eat by Design coaches. And they're moving to Italy, and it's a virtual program. They have their own group and everything. I can't do all this every day. I like it, but I can't. So they have programs. When I send you the email with the recording, you'll see a link there. They have actually a new program. It's kind of actually a bit of a crazy one. You can be in their group for the whole year for like $49. It's ridiculous. You're not getting one-on-one coaching, but you're in their coaching group where they're just working with people, doing webinars, seminars, things I can't do because I just don't have the time. If you need one-on-one, they have it, but they have that basic kind of group. So I'll send it so you can click the link and you can go from there. Otherwise, I want to thank you guys for being here tonight. I love doing this stuff. I wish I could do it more. We are